I had a man in Breathitt County say to me once, and I'll never forget this, he said, Dee, you know, people come down here all the time and they tell us that they're going to help us and they're going to do things, and then they send somebody down and they study us. And we've been studied to death, and so we know we're poor, we know we have problems in education, and we know we have drug problems now. Now, since y'all have studied us to death, why don't y'all do something about it? And I stood there and felt so sorry for the truth of that statement and what he just said. I love Appalachia. I think this is the most underutilized area in the state of Kentucky in way of tourism. I think it is the greatest representation of culture and what Kentucky is about. And I think the cultural and arts community of Appalachia is something that we can showcase worldwide. It just hasn't quite been done, except by very small sects of talented people. For example, Apple Shop in Renfro Valley. And we have the new Mountain Arts Center, of course, and the Convention Center in Pikeville. We're making progress, but that progress needs to really be brought to fruition here. And I think with a team focusing on it, and again, working rather than kind of showboating as elected officials, I think we will be able to do so.
Let's talk, we talked last week about health care. Let's also talk about the President's cap-and-trade bill. Where do you stand on that? Are you in favor of it?
No, I am not. I'm not in favor of that. I think it is a real harsh burden will put a real harsh burden on our coal companies, on our coal industry here in the state of Kentucky. You know, I spoke in the last program about wanting to try to take out the problems of mountaintop removal, try to address those problems environmentally, and have a real problem with not putting hard environmental conditions upon that. But the cap and trade is absolutely a burden on the coal industry. And, you know, it doesn't really help the environment at all. The people don't understand what this cap and trade is about. Let me try to give a quick explanation. In Louisville, they had the vehicle emissions test, and they made everybody sign up and go put their vehicles through emissions test. And if there was a certain emissions on it, you had to get it fixed. But there was a tax on the people every year they had to do it, and it cut the automobile emissions. But what they did was they then gave that cut over to the industries there in the county. In other words, it didn't reduce the amount of emissions. It just traded it from the people producing it with their automobiles. What they saved was actually given over and allowed to the industries that there. So it's just a transfer of carbon emissions, but the industry comes out ahead of it and the people get taxed on it. So it's the same thing with cap and trade. You know, it's not going to cut the total amount of emissions in the air. It's just going to displace our production of it and give it over to somebody else who can then have the industrial development that it allows.
And it's very inequitable to Kentucky when you look at it being one of the largest coal-producing states. In addition to, it's going to raise electrical bills and affect the public. And again, that's when I think any administration needs to throw a red flag into this program and say, let's take another look at this. So those two reasons, yes.
If you were governor now, would you have accepted the stimulus money?
You know, Mr. Beshear, I believe, is going to try to buy this next governor's race by spending that stimulus money, you know, amongst these cronies and amongst the people. But that's your sons and daughters and your grandsons and granddaughters' tax dollar they're spending there. And no, I wouldn't. I think this whole stimulus thing has been a failure. I haven't seen any jobs created out of it. All I've seen is that the traders on Wall Street are able to give out the same kind of multi-million-dollar bonuses as they have in the past. You know, they are going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars without any accountability. It's like Willie Sutton, the great bank robber, discovered the combination to the Treasury and opened it up in broad daylight, and they're hauling it out by the truckload. You know, you just can't print money like that, like they're printing it, without devaluing the dollar and devaluing everything that, you know, America's entire economic stand. It's going to come to rest. It's going to hurt us. I do not think the stimulus package is working, and you know, people might think I was crazy, but I would have a real problem accepting the stimulus package money.
I would have advised the governor to not accept the stimulus money. I'm opposed to it. Yes.
If you're elected governor, what role, because many people have said that the lieutenant governor is basically a figurehead. Governor Patton has even said you can do away with the position. What role would Dee Riley have as lieutenant governor?
Well, let me tell you, I am well trained by strong, independent, intelligent women. Having 3 daughters of my own, I understand what it is, especially when they're right about something. I see Dee Riley as just absolute positive impact in many ways, but I think economic development is really her forte, and I think that's something she would really like to get into, because I think she can attract people to the state of Kentucky. I think she can sell the state of Kentucky. She's traveled around the country, and she's had remarkable and successful work experiences in several other states, and I just believe that she'd be a terrific face to put on Kentucky for recruiting, economics, and employment.
Well, I think so. I think that probably serving both as Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of the Economic Cabinet would be exactly what I would request of the Governor and ask for in that, so that I'm both working and serving somewhat as a figurehead. I don't think there's any reason the Lieutenant Governor isn't doing anything, and I don't think it should be done away with, because, in fact, we support the Governor and his agenda, and that's a very important role.
I cannot imagine her not being an absolute godsend to this state. I mean, I'm not going to let her sit around. I'm not going to let her do nothing. Heck, somebody's got to do the work up there. I'm good, but I'm not that good. I need all the help I can get.
Let's get to some more of our viewer questions, and these were submitted last week when we were live here on the program. Sarah in Richmond, and she submitted this via my blog, Neil's Notebook. She says, "It is my opinion that education is one of the most important issues in any election. Kentucky is consistently in the bottom as far as public schools go, and I can attest that upon graduating from high school, I was not prepared for college by any means. I know this year UK has laid off some people, which until now has been unheard of. Sometimes it seems the best solution is to fire those in charge and start over, but politicians, no matter what they claim while campaigning, never have the guts to do this. What are your plans to get Kentucky public schools back on track and get our kids ready for college or work when and if they graduate from high school? And do you have any plans to help college or technical schools be more affordable?"
Well, of course, we covered this in last week's program. Yes, dear, we have what we call the Commonwealth Incentive Program. And from K through 12, we're going to do everything we can to strengthen the curriculum and get the proper funding in there, make sure all the kids get a hot breakfast in the morning. You can't teach a hungry kid, and to try to meet as many of their needs as possible. But the centerpiece of our in educational reform is Commonwealth Incentive, where every high school graduate in the state of Kentucky gets a $5,000 voucher for books, tuition, and fees to any institution of further learning within the state of Kentucky. We've got to get out of thinking in terms of higher education for a few students into further education for all students, A, B, C, and D students, because if we don't train the C and D students into employability, they're going to be a drag on the rest of us too. And so what that means is this is not for pizza, rent, and beer. It's for books, tuition, and fees to any institution, whether it be truck driving school, cosmetology school, UK, UL, Spencerian College, community college, to give every high school graduate, every high school student out there in all these counties some vision, some idea beyond the high school diploma, that they might have a window to the world, that they might have someplace where they can put that foot down and get a little traction to go out and be trained into employability. Now, it doesn't get spent until that person actually has the internal commitment to go get trained into something. It ought to invite in and attract in worker training programs from all over the world, all emerging industries that are going to have to train new workers in something. They ought to want to come to Kentucky because we'll pay them to train our workers in their industry, and it ought to give hope and vision to hundreds and thousands of kids out there right now, especially in poor counties who don't see beyond high school. And all you parents out there with students, in school right now, this is an excellent opportunity to start talking in terms of what are you going to do after high school.
Here's another question. This comes from Jeremy on Facebook, and he says, "Would your administration support a tax-free holiday in Kentucky for back-to-school shopping?" We just recently did a story about this. Tennessee, several surrounding states have a tax-free holiday.
We need as much help as we can get. Absolutely, we do. Now that's something that is very precise. It's not just throwing money out at something. It's something that's very precise, because the only money we're going to lose out on is money being spent to directly further the education of our children.
And I'm the mother of 4, so any promotion of education, tax-free shopping day, absolutely.